Okay, so good afternoon. Welcome to the premiere, the series premiere of Power Huddle, Inside the Mind of ESG Gurus. I'm Heidi Friedman. I'm a partner at Thompson, Hine and co-chair of our firm's ESG Collaborative. We're going to have chats during these monthly series with innovative ESG execs. These are going to be unscripted discussions, and we're going to hear from these execs from a variety of industries and public and private companies who are actively paving the way as ESG trendsetters, championing pragmatic ESG strategies that align with their business values and building sustainable frameworks to advance their company's goals. I am super excited today that Megan Belcher, who is Chief Legal and External Affairs Officer at Scoular, a global ag business, who is doing all kinds of interesting things. I've learned a lot recently. Megan leads their legal, brand marketing, corporate communications, sustainability, and ESG functions and sits on their board. We'll have to ask her if she has free time ever. But I thank Michelle Banks, who has, among many things, most recently introduced me to Megan, which has been a gift. And before we get started, I just wanted a few housekeeping items. I don't know how much time we're going to have for questions because these are intended to be short 30-minute chats, but please do put a question in the chat either to everyone or to me, and I will get to those that I can. And we'll also try to follow up with others afterwards who have questions if we're not able to answer them during our discussion. Today's program is being recorded as part of the series and will be available to view in our library on Thompson Hine's YouTube channel. I must tell you, this presentation is intended for the general information of individuals and organizations on matters of current interest. Thoughts and opinions being expressed today are those of the individual panelists and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of our panel members, clients, employers, affiliates, or Thompson Hine. The content should not be taken as advice, as the views expressed are for informational purposes only. So now that we've gotten the disclaimer out of the way, let's get started. So Megan, tell us a little bit about yourself and your ESG journey. How did you get started and where has that path taken you?
Well, Heidi, first I want to say thank you for having me. This is a wonderful program, and as someone who consumes a lot of ESG thought leadership, it's incredibly exciting to be here and be part of it. I think we are a little bit unique in that we are a 135-plus-year-old company, and we are in the oldest sustainability industry in the world, which is agriculture. I joined 6 years ago, and at that time, we didn't have a formalized sustainability program. But we really were at, I'd say, the inflection point as an agricultural company to say, we sit in the middle of the supply chain and we work with tens of thousands of producers and we work with many thousands of end users. And each of those individuals have a business case to be moving along their sustainability journey. And there's a place where we can really play a strategic fulcrum point for them as they think about moving along that journey. So we formalized our formal sustainability and ESG program about 3 years ago. We spent a lot of time doing discovery work in our business units around the world. And Scoular, for those of you that might not be familiar with us, we're the biggest company you've probably never heard of. We're a little over 10 billion in annual revenue. We operate in North America and Asia primarily, but provide food and feed and grain ingredients around the world, serving as not only someone who can transact those items for you and handle those items, but also as someone who can provide the supply chain to get you there. As we started on that discovery and journey, we really came up with 5 pillars that were authentic for us and our customers and our producers, and launched that program and have been growing ever since.
I love that you use the word authentic, by the way. So one of the first things we tell clients, especially private companies, when they come to us and may not have as advanced of a program and when they're starting, is it has to be authentically you. You can't just pull an off-the-shelf ESG program. It has to align with your business values, which I know your pillars do. And by the way, I learned that there's something called Food and Grain Magazine, because when I was doing my research for today, you guys are like the superstar of that publication. So that was a learning curve for me. But so what, Megan, tell us a little bit about right now. I think Kim Yapchi or somebody said recently, like, I can't believe how far we have gotten with no regulation, which to me is somewhat mind-blowing, to be honest with you. And there's kind of all this stuff looming, right? So what's your biggest challenge right now, and how are you tackling it in the ESG space?
I think for us, and we are not alone in this bit of a puzzle, is focusing on our carbon journey, and then thinking about what the environmental issues are that are going to be primary behind that, likely in the ag space, water. And making sure that, one, we are on a thoughtful path to not only be gathering our data, and I'd say particularly for companies like ours, where we are very decentralized and
Mhm.
have operations around the world and a heavy footprint from a facility perspective. We have over 110 facilities,
Mhm.
but are not major scope one carbon producers.
Okay.
So we're looking down that value chain to scope 2 and scope 3. And I would say we are still on the path to getting a fulsome perspective on our carbon footprint. We've made a lot of inroads there, and we've come a long way, but continuing to get refined on that, and then set goals that resonate not only with our producers as they think about what's right for them and their family farms, but also what meets the need of our huge consumer facing end users, right? So if you think about the big consumer facing companies, whether they be food companies or pet food companies, being able to say to them, we can partner with you in a customized way so we can help you along your bespoke journey to what you've shared to the external environment, to where you're trying to meet with the guessing game of what the SEC will do, and how you're thinking about sustainability as a brand differentiator for you as a consumer facing company.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the number one challenge we hear from virtually all of our clients, private and public. A lot of the public companies, I would say, are a little farther along on scope 3. But even a lot of, those folks are limiting it to based on certain products, et cetera, because at some point, tracking scope 3 all the way gets to be mind-boggling. Can you talk a little bit more about how you're getting your arms around the scope 3 emissions piece?
We are really just starting on that. We've
Okay.
spent really the last year getting, I'd say, solid legs under us as we think about scope 1 and even scope 2. As a supply chain company, we're going to have to work very closely with our transportation providers and those as we think about who we partner with on
Mhm.
that journey. And I think, you talked about how far we've gotten without regulation. We're all operating a bit in the Wild West, right? As we think about what will matter, what are the rules of the road, and what is an authentic framework for you and your organization that also makes sense monetarily, right? Because it has to make business sense, as many examples have provided us in larger business settings. And so we are really at the front end of that journey.
Yeah, and I love how you talked a lot about thinking of the whole supply chain. So you're not looking at your goals in a box, with guardrails. You're really looking at the whole supply chain, which is so important because, vendors and consumers, at any company really drive a lot of this. Are you seeing, you talked about, for example, like your customers, and I know you guys do a lot in logistics, et cetera. Are you seeing any demands yet made on you relating to ESG mandates
I
as
would say
folks?
less so. I would describe them less so as mandates and
Okay.
more as, let us talk to you about the declarations that we've made and the infrastructure that we've built for ourselves. And let me talk to you about why it's a business advantage for you
Mm.
to meet us on those places where we've set milestones, and why that is a business win for you if you can match what you're offering to what we're saying to the external environment. So we've seen it more couched, much more so in a carrot versus a stick. And
Mm.
I personally believe, as an ESG leader, that is the more effective methodology of the two.
I agree. I've seen some mandates coming down, like, requiring SBTI if you want to continue to do our business and things like that. And I think sometimes the folks making those mandates, while they're good and well-intentioned, don't realize the impact that might not have on a small mom and pop business that hasn't even started. So, the rigorous SBTI protocol, for example. So I think that's different. Really interested just in maybe hearing a little bit more about when you're dealing with family farms and things like that in this space. That's a unique aspect. And I'd love to hear if you can share, how are those conversations going and what are you seeing in those communications?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit maybe more about our structure and how that helps us, I think, in that journey, and then I'll talk a bit more about the diversity of family businesses that we're dealing with and corporate businesses as well. So we have a producer strategy team whose only role is our interactions with those producers and how we continue to make those more strategic over time, and to be very discovery focused on how we understand about their businesses and the challenges that they are facing. As we can appreciate, family farming is a complicated and phenomenal profession. And that landscape is constantly changing, particularly as you look at more corporate and larger sized entities buying up farmland and getting into that business for a variety of reasons, right? Whether that be strategic or sustainability driven, or however you think about that kind of corporate expansion in the farming world. I think we are very focused on making sure we understand the individual needs of those family farms, and also coming at it not only from the perspective of this is the right thing to do, but being very thoughtful to explain to them why this makes business sense for them. If you think about carbon credits or the variety of farming practices that come downstream as a result of the value that's getting put on those credits, we are very thoughtful to ensure that we understand their priorities and their business and really co-partner with them on why our sustainability needs and how we are working with them make sense for them as a family and as a business, and not just focused on our own needs or our end users' needs. So we're really looking to be more symbiotic as that middle point in the supply chain.
Which, I mean, it sounds like you're just an excellent partner in that space. So it really takes strong partnerships to make the magic happen, so they say. But so that I think is sort of unique to the ag business, right? And what else would you say in the sustainability environment might be unique to that world that others might not know about?
I will maybe speak more to us, but I know that for some in our competitive set, it is also important to them. We are deeply, deeply invested in the smaller and rural communities, not only where our employees live and work, but where our producer partners live and work. And we have invested a tremendous amount in those communities, not only through money that we put through from our profits, our PBT, into a foundation, but also through the time and talent of our employees. So we have a multi-layered community engagement strategy that is really focused on those rural communities, ensuring that they remain vibrant and that our employees are bringing to bear the resources of Scoular. So not only our employees can be successful in those communities, but that our co-partners can be successful there as well.
It's such a good integration of sort of the E and the S overlapping and integrating. I love that so much. So as a privately held company, what do you foresee as the impact of these sort of looming SEC regs? Oh, we're going to have them by 2020, end of 2023. Oh, we're not going to, who knows when they're coming. But what do you expect from that? And are you preparing in any way, even though you're not a public company?
I think we are preparing in the sense that we have very thoughtfully developed a program that has at its core a viewpoint and a mindset of continuous improvement,
Okay.
deeply relevant to our business, and an understanding that we have many publicly traded large customers who will have demands to meet at some point. I'm probably deeply pessimistic about what that point will be and what they will actually look like and how they will be enforced. So we are staying, I think, very agile, which is our sweet spot in the market. And we will be ready to support those end users, both through our producer relationships and through our program. But I would overall just say we are staying very curious, but ensuring that we have the foundational program that can come to bear once those regulations are finally issued.
Yeah, it will be interesting, and put aside all the litigation that will go probably along with those, and then the other looming thing is the FTC Green Guides update, right? So, oh, they were supposed to be updated in 2022. There's a zillion comments. God only knows when those are coming as well. But I think that it will certainly impact some of the consumer class action and greenwashing, which is on the rise. So I know when you and I talked previously, you haven't necessarily seen greenwashing claims, but what's your sort of risk management or risk mitigation strategy around those, and what have you seen out there in the greenwashing space?
Yeah, I think probably the benefit of having a lawyer at the top of the house on your ESG program is you read everything with an eye to it being a litigation exhibit. So we are, I'd say, very mindful as we look about what we are pushing to the external environment to ensure that it is accurate, authentic, and that we can back up those claims. If we were to be in a position where we were to have one of those conversations, I would say the plaintiff's bar will always evolve and find new ways to grow their revenue model. And this is certainly going to be one of them. And it will certainly, there will certainly be a big boon around that when regulations do eventually come down. I will say for us, we are probably at that medium-sized and a program that does not have a 20 or 25 pillar foundation, where I'm comfortable that we really have a good understanding of everything that's happening in our organization, and that there are not many loose ends where you might not know if those are authentic or not. So not a big concern for us, but I can definitively see that snowball is going to grow as you think about an ambitious plaintiff's bar. And we will just continue to think about how we can best support our cohorts in that situation.
Yeah, I think they said before something like innovative litigation, which, they're always innovating.
Yeah.
So that's for sure. But, and tell me a little bit, you mentioned the data piece of it, right? So, the easiest thing for lawyers to ask when we see something in a report or on a website, every time I read an ESG report or I'm asked to review something, I said, okay, like, where's the data for this? How do you track it? Where do you keep it? How are you guys handling all of that? Like, in a nutshell, is there some process that you've implemented, or how are you tackling that?
Yeah, I would say over the last 18 months, we've done it with really a twofold strategy. So we've hired world-class talent to be on our team. We have an incredible team of sustainability professionals who not only are deep sustainability subject matter experts, but they're also deep ag experts. And they understand not only the agribusiness industry, but they also understand the industry of those end users as well as our producers. So we've really got subject matter expertise at all end. So we can build the right systems to track the data that we know that we're going to need with kind of that ability to look around corners because of that subject matter expertise. Separately, we have acquired a couple of new wonderful pieces of software. I think something that I've been really excited to see in the ESG space over the last 5 years is that startup and AI and innovative software platform kind of structure come to bear. And we have acquired a couple of those, I think, in some very specific areas to make sure we're tracking those. I'd say maybe a third ancillary strategy that we've utilized is co-partnerships with others in the technology and venture space who are really on that cutting edge and making thoughtful partnerships or thoughtful investments in that venture space so that we can really be ahead of the market as we look to be innovators and have the ability to look around corners for our customers.
So are you using different databases for different like different for GHG than you're using for D&I and things like that? Or is it one integrated database at this point?
Right now, we have a couple of different systems, and then we can integrate them on the back end.
Okay, yeah, I always find that fascinating. And my disclaimer to folks to joke around, I don't think a day goes by where I don't get at least 10 to 15 emails with someone trying to sell me something ESG related or software related. I think I might have set a record yesterday with how many of those I get. So, my unsolicited advice on all that is just make sure you do your research, which I'm sure you guys have for sure. And made some key decisions that involved your IT folks. We are putting out our first ESG report as a firm actually in the next week or two, and we've been partnering with our IT team to make sure our data is being tracked. So it's super important, but there's so many different platforms. So I love how you guys have done your homework and are strategic about what you're using and how you're putting it together.
And I want to be clear that I think new and innovative is great. I think we've always also been judicious that we don't want to be in a data management situation where 3 years later we're finding ourselves in 3 transactions down the line where our platform has kept evolving in an inconsistent way. So we also are very judicious to look for kind of stable and consistent partners that we know can be a reliable platform for us.
Right, not necessarily always the very new kid on the block
Right.
who decided, oh, ESG's big. I'm gonna do that now. So
Right.
yeah, I said if anyone says they're an expert, they're that's something to check out. But what would we've talked about so many successes already in this short conversation in terms of what you've led and your ESG team has led over there. But what would you say maybe is your biggest ESG success to date?
I think to date it has been one very, very quickly standing up a program and being very thoughtful that it is right sized for our company, it is right sized for our producer population, and it's right sized for our end users, while I think the whole time building in really thoughtful agility so we can really offer those customized solutions to our partners. I think as all the folks listening can appreciate, no company is on the same sustainability journey. Everybody needs a little something different. So as we think about that middle piece that we play in the supply chain, particularly on consumer-facing foods, consumer-facing pet food, the feedstock area, we have really built, I think, quickly an authentic and true, no pun intended, sustainable program that that still offers agility in it, and we've really brought the right talent to bear that truly understands not only our abilities and our ability to innovate and customize, but also what those producers and end users need with their program, because it truly is in so many ways, as I'm sure you see in your practice every day, Heidi, it is truly a domino chain. And one lever that you pull may affect another. And we take that place where we sit in the ag supply chain and candidly for the worldwide food chain very seriously, and to have the ability to support those partners and set them up for success as well.
Yeah, agility. I mean, authenticity, agility. You're hitting all the keywords. I mean, we certainly talk a lot about that. ESG has to be alive and breathing and moving. A lot of people, I think, feel that you can do a materiality assessment, but look at your stakeholders, create a program, and that's your program. Unless you're updating that, every couple of years, it's stale. I would even argue right now it can get stale even more quickly than that. We now have clients that are doing, ESG materiality assessments, or I like to call them priority assessments because materiality is a word that scares me as a lawyer, on a regional basis or something like that. And they're even drilling down more succinctly, I would say, than what they did in the past. So I think keeping it agile is key. And I would say, do you have any tips for people who are trying to focus on agility? And I know obviously talent is huge. I'm assuming you guys have like an ESG council. I think I saw that in your sustainability report. Talk a little bit maybe about how you keep things agile and what role that council plays.
Yes, we call it an impact council, and it is widely cross-functional. It is led by Jennifer Detloff on my team, who is the frontline leader for our sustainability team. And we really we leverage, I'd say, the breadth of expertise that team comes together to have the ability to spot trends, to make sure we're staying consistent with what our various consumers want to be hearing about, and that we're not bogging down our business unnecessarily. I think also, and I'm sure you're experiencing in this as well, in the last 24 months, ESG and sustainability and the various topics that roll out to that have much more become, in many cases, emotional or political issues that can create a potential communications or brand issue for companies. And I think it's also a wonderful barometer for us to make sure that we're getting a truly inclusive set of perspectives at the table, so we can make sure that we understand hot buttons or sensitivity areas that maybe we would otherwise miss just as a small set of technical experts.
I love that. Diversity of thought is so important generally, but in this context, and everyone says to me, like, is ESG going away with these anti-ESG laws and things like that? And I don't have a single client, private or public, that's changing really anything that they're doing right now. They're certainly gathering all the right information and making sure they're using the right terminology, but the overall goal, process, and stakeholder input has not changed much. So would you agree with that?
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think that environmental change primarily affects how you're thinking about your priorities and how you're thinking about messaging.
Absolutely. So in our few minutes left, I don't know with all of these titles how you have any free time. I also know you do a ton of work supporting women in the legal profession, which is how we had connected, and I marvel at that as well. But when you're not wearing one of these hats and external affairs and ESG and all these things, what's fun for you? How do you spend your free time?
I primarily spend it, I'm the single mom of 2 young kids, and I'm very hands-on. I serve on their school board, and I'm very passionate about pro bono service. And as a family, we do a lot of volunteer work together. So whether we're here at home or following our passion of traveling around the world, we always try and work in a community engagement piece to that. And they are really the center and priority of my life. So if I'm not at work or I'm not engaging in one of my industry passions, I'm usually with them, and we're laughing or traveling or following one of our passions.
I love that. So yes, and a good time to focus on it is as an empty nester, it goes away really quickly. And I think you and I also share the same passion for RBG with your picture behind you. So we share that as well. So thank you, Megan. What a way to kick off our series with you and your insight. You are a guru that has built an incredible program over the last 6 years. I encourage everyone to take a look at the sustainability report. It's fabulous, it's factual, it's real, it's authentic, it's all those things that we talked about. And for those, just as a reminder that we did record this and you will be able to watch it on our YouTube channel. We want to thank you for attending. And I want to make sure that you put on your calendar October 26th. On that date will be our next Guru series. I will be talking to Susan Lester, who is Senior Director of ESG at Otis Elevator, and was more recently, right before that, at McDonald's. So that will be an interesting conversation, hearing about some different industries. But Megan, keep doing the good work, and thank you for sharing your incredible knowledge and insight with us today.
Thanks for the generous invitation, Heidi.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.